Welcome back to the Crypto Intellect, your trusted source for the latest XRP news, Ripple updates, and the biggest developments shaping the future of digital finance. Today's headline is absolutely massive. XRP just went live in 35+ countries. If you've been following Ripple's global expansion strategy, you know that some announcements create headlines, while others quietly build the infrastructure that could transform international payments for years to come. And what we're discussing today falls firmly into that second category. Ripple has officially taken a strategic equity stake in Flutterwave, Africa's largest payments company, and the implications are far bigger than many people realize. This isn't a rumor, it isn't speculation, and it isn't another pilot program being tested behind closed doors. This is a documented partnership connecting Ripple technology, RLUSD, and the XRP Ledger directly into payment infrastructure that already processes billions of dollars across more than 35 countries. That's why so many people in the XRP community are paying attention. We're going to break down exactly what happened, what it means, what is confirmed, and why this development could become one of the most important utility stories of the year. As always, this is not financial advice. Do your own research before making any investment decisions. Now let's dive right into what could be one of Ripple's biggest international expansion moves yet. The first thing investors need to understand is the actual deal itself. On June 16, 2026, Ripple announced a strategic investment in Flutterwave as part of the company's Series E funding round. Flutterwave isn't some early-stage startup trying to prove a concept. This is already one of the most influential financial technology companies operating across Africa. The funding round reportedly values the company at approximately $3.2 billion, with some reports suggesting a figure closer to $3.3 billion. While neither Ripple nor Flutterwave disclosed the exact size of Ripple's investment or the percentage of ownership involved, the significance isn't really about the equity amount. The significance is what the investment unlocks. Flutterwave has already processed over 1 billion transactions and facilitated more than $50 billion in payment volume throughout its network. That's an existing system handling real-world financial activity every single day. Ripple isn't entering at the ground floor here. Instead, Ripple is connecting itself to infrastructure that already has scale, already has users, and already has transaction volume. That distinction matters because many blockchain partnerships never reach meaningful adoption. This one begins with adoption already in place. What makes this partnership particularly interesting is that it goes far beyond simply writing a check. Ripple and Flutterwave have outlined a framework built around multiple layers of integration. The first component involves RLUSD, Ripple's dollar-backed stablecoin. RLUSD is being integrated directly into Flutterwave's payment ecosystem and remittance services as a settlement asset. The second component centers around the XRP Ledger itself, which serves as the underlying transaction infrastructure supporting movement and settlement. The third component involves connecting Flutterwave's domestic payment networks with Ripple payments through a unified API. In simple terms, instead of creating disconnected systems that need separate communication channels, both networks become directly connected. This creates a more streamlined flow of information and value across borders. For businesses, that could mean faster settlement. For remittance users, it could mean lower costs. For Ripple, it means its technology becomes embedded deeper into real-world payment activity. That's a major distinction because infrastructure-level adoption often generates more lasting impact than short-term market hype. One of the biggest misconceptions surrounding announcements like this is that they suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The reality is very different. Flutterwave has been building toward a stablecoin-enabled future for quite some time. Back in 2025, the company partnered with Polygon Labs to support stablecoin payment solutions for businesses operating across Africa. Around the same period, Flutterwave also acquired financial technology assets designed to strengthen banking connectivity and reduce fragmentation between payment systems. Those decisions were already signaling a move toward a more blockchain-enabled architecture. Ripple's investment didn't start that journey. Instead, it accelerated a strategy that was already underway. That's important because it suggests alignment between both organizations rather than a temporary marketing partnership. Flutterwave was already investing in digital asset infrastructure before Ripple became involved. Ripple recognized that direction and chose to become a strategic participant. When companies with existing momentum combine resources, the resulting partnership tends to be more meaningful than arrangements created solely for publicity. Now let's talk about why Africa matters so much in this discussion. Cross-border payments across many African corridors remain among the most expensive in the world. Businesses and consumers frequently encounter high transaction costs, extended settlement delays, and dependency on intermediary banking networks. In many cases, payments must travel through multiple correspondent banks before reaching their final destination. Every additional intermediary introduces cost, complexity, and delay. This is precisely the type of problem Ripple has spent years attempting to solve. By utilizing RLUSD as a settlement mechanism and leveraging the XRP Ledger as supporting infrastructure, the process can potentially eliminate several layers of friction. Instead of relying entirely on traditional banking routes, transactions can move through more efficient digital pathways. This doesn't mean every payment instantly becomes free or instantaneous, but it does mean that real improvements become possible. When a company already handling billions in transaction volume adopts infrastructure designed to improve efficiency, investors naturally start paying attention. One particularly important area of focus is Flutterwave's remittance ecosystem. Remittances play a critical role throughout Africa, with millions of people relying on funds sent from family members working abroad. Traditional remittance systems often involve significant fees and long waiting periods. Ripple's technology stack is designed specifically to address these pain points. Through Flutterwave's existing products, RLUSD can potentially serve as a stable settlement asset while transactions utilize the XRP Ledger's capabilities behind the scenes. This matters because remittances represent recurring economic activity rather than speculative trading volume. Every day, people send money home to support families, pay bills, and fund essential expenses. If Ripple technology becomes integrated into these flows, it creates utility based on real-world demand. That's fundamentally different from hype-driven narratives focused exclusively on short-term price movements. Infrastructure adoption becomes meaningful when it serves economic activity that exists regardless of market sentiment. This is where many investors make a mistake when evaluating XRP-related news. They often assume every partnership announcement should immediately trigger a dramatic price increase, but infrastructure development doesn't always work that way. The role of the XRP Ledger in this partnership is primarily structural. Transactions can clear through the ledger, settlement processes can become more efficient, and transaction fees associated with network activity can contribute to ecosystem utility. However, that doesn't automatically translate into instant price action. The value proposition here is long-term adoption rather than short-term speculation. Utility stories often develop gradually. Payment volume grows over time. Transaction activity increases incrementally. Additional participants join the network. The market may not always react immediately, but infrastructure adoption creates foundations that can support future growth. Understanding that distinction helps investors separate meaningful developments from unrealistic expectations. Another reason this announcement deserves attention is because it fits into a much larger pattern. Ripple's expansion across Africa did not begin with Flutterwave. Over the past several years, Ripple has established relationships with multiple organizations throughout the region. These partnerships have focused on improving cross-border payments, strengthening remittance corridors, and expanding financial connectivity between Africa and global markets. Rather than pursuing a single massive rollout, Ripple has consistently built its presence one corridor at a time. That's often how successful payment networks scale. They don't emerge overnight. They develop gradually through partnerships, integrations, and infrastructure deployment. When viewed in isolation, one announcement might appear limited. But when viewed as part of a broader strategy, a different picture emerges. Ripple appears focused on building a comprehensive network that connects multiple markets through interoperable payment infrastructure. The Flutterwave investment becomes significantly more meaningful when considered within that larger framework. There is another major development that ties directly into Ripple's broader vision, and that is the company's expansion into treasury management. Many people focus exclusively on payments, but Ripple has also been building tools for corporate financial operations. Following its acquisition of treasury software assets, Ripple introduced solutions designed to help businesses manage both traditional financial assets and digital assets from a unified environment. These capabilities allow organizations to monitor balances, manage liquidity, and potentially interact with blockchain-based financial systems through interfaces that resemble traditional treasury platforms. This matters because enterprise adoption often requires familiar workflows. Businesses don't want to completely replace existing systems overnight. They want solutions that integrate into established operational processes. Ripple appears to understand this reality and has been developing products accordingly. The strategy isn't simply about creating blockchain technology, it's about making that technology accessible within environments businesses already use. Ripple's vision becomes even clearer when considering the growing interest among corporate finance leaders in digital assets. Many executives recognize that blockchain technology is becoming increasingly relevant. but they also face challenges integrating new capabilities into existing financial operations. Treasury teams manage cash, investments, liabilities, and liquidity across multiple systems. Introducing digital assets without creating additional complexity is a significant challenge. Ripple's approach attempts to bridge that gap by combining traditional treasury functionality with blockchain-enabled capabilities. If successful, this strategy could encourage broader institutional participation. Rather than asking businesses to completely reinvent their financial infrastructure, Ripple is providing tools designed to complement current workflows. That's often how transformational technology gains adoption. It doesn't force abrupt change. It gradually becomes integrated into processes organizations already understand and trust. Another topic generating discussion is the relationship between RLUSD and XRP itself. Some observers mistakenly assume that increased stablecoin usage somehow reduces XRP's relevance, but the XRP Ledger was never designed to support only one asset. From the beginning, the network was built to facilitate movement and interaction between multiple assets. One important feature often highlighted in discussions is the concept of bridging. When direct liquidity between two assets is limited, XRP can potentially function as an intermediary asset, helping facilitate efficient exchanges. As additional assets enter the ecosystem, the opportunities for network activity can expand rather than contract. That's why many supporters view stablecoin growth as complementary to the broader ecosystem. RLUSD may serve specific settlement purposes, while XRP continues playing a structural role within the network architecture. Understanding that distinction helps explain why Ripple continues investing in both stablecoin expansion and XRP Ledger development simultaneously. Looking specifically at the Flutterwave integration, businesses are likely to prefer stable assets such as RLUSD for pricing predictability. Most companies don't want significant volatility affecting operational payments. Stablecoins solve that problem by maintaining a value linked to traditional currencies. However, the infrastructure supporting those transactions remains important. The XRP Ledger can provide settlement functionality, transaction processing, and interoperability between different financial assets. Even when end users primarily interact with stablecoins, the underlying network continues performing critical functions. That's one reason infrastructure stories often receive less attention than price predictions, despite potentially carrying greater long-term significance. People naturally focus on visible outcomes, yet the systems enabling those outcomes frequently create the foundation for sustainable growth. The Flutterwave partnership highlights exactly that dynamic. Beyond payments and treasury management, there is also a broader industry trend that deserves consideration. Financial institutions around the world are increasingly exploring tokenization, digital asset custody, and blockchain-based representations of traditional financial instruments. Major organizations are investing resources into understanding how tokenized assets could coexist with existing markets. This trend extends beyond cryptocurrencies and touches stocks, bonds, real estate, and other asset classes. As institutions explore these opportunities, wallet infrastructure, settlement systems, and interoperability become increasingly important. Ripple has positioned itself within that conversation for years. The company's investments in payments, treasury solutions, stablecoins, and blockchain infrastructure all connect to a larger vision of digital financial interoperability. Whether that vision unfolds exactly as expected remains to be seen, but the strategic direction is becoming increasingly clear. When you step back and examine all the pieces together, the significance of this Flutterwave deal becomes much easier to understand. Ripple isn't simply partnering with another fintech company. It is embedding components of its ecosystem into infrastructure already facilitating billions of dollars in economic activity. Flutterwave operates across more than 35 countries, processes enormous transaction volumes, and serves businesses throughout one of the world's most important emerging markets. The integration of RLUSD, Ripple Payments, and the XRP Ledger represents a real deployment into existing financial systems, rather than a theoretical future concept. That's why headlines claiming XRP has effectively gone live across 35+ countries are generating so much excitement. While the reality is more nuanced than a simple headline suggests, the underlying development remains significant. This is infrastructure entering production environments where actual money moves every day. Ultimately, the biggest takeaway isn't whether XRP's price moves tomorrow, next week, or next month. The biggest takeaway is that Ripple continues expanding utility across global markets. The Flutterwave investment is documented, the integrations are real, and the strategic direction is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Whether you're most interested in cross-border payments, stablecoin adoption, treasury management, or the long-term role of the XRP Ledger, this announcement touches all of those themes. It demonstrates how Ripple is attempting to build infrastructure first and allow utility to follow. That may not always produce instant excitement in the market, but it represents the type of development many investors have been waiting to see. So the question now becomes simple. What matters most to XRP's future? The Flutterwave partnership itself, the expansion of RLUSD, the growth of Ripple's enterprise ecosystem, or the increasing role of the XRP Ledger in global settlement? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this update, make sure you subscribe to the Crypto Intellect, turn on notifications, and stay tuned because the next major XRP story may already be developing right now.